Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've got an update on the ongoing trade situation with China and Donald Trump having a phone conversation with Xi Jinping, the top leader of the Chinese Communist Party, their first conversation since before Trump's inauguration. We've also got more stuff. Elon Musk coming out against the bill. It's like this new campaign Musk has with X. When he comes out against something or he's trying to push something, it's just constant artillery barrage of tweets. And so we're also going to be looking at that as well. But this also is in heavy relation to another thing that Trump just did in terms of him utilizing executive authority and emergency powers to help with mineral refinement and just overall mineral extraction in the United States because of what China is doing in this trade war. As we know, when it comes to the rare earths, the United States, we do have a significant amount of rare earths. Rare earths are not technically rare, but the refinement of them is something that the US really lacks in. China almost has a full monopoly over refining them, which allows us to use them for EVs, for smartphones, and other important practices. And so let's take a look and see what's going on here. President Trump spoke with China's top leader Xi Jinping on a Thursday for the first time since taking office, according to Chinese state media, as a fragile truce in a trade war between the world's two largest economies shows signs of unraveling. And so they say that, and I don't think I would necessarily agree with that assessment. The idea that it's unraveling, I do think there are some obvious issues. Besant came out and said that it's very fragile and there are disagreements when it comes to specific things. There's always going to be, you talk about a trade deal, but by and large, I do think China and the United States want the same thing. China wants to limit their reliance on the United States. The United States wants to limit their reliance on China for two different reasons. China needs our consumer base. We are a capitalist society, and so our companies, in the spirit of competition, they like having the stuff produced in China because it's cheaper. But so we're trying to wean off of that. And we'll see, is it going to get down to a 0% trade deficit? Probably not. But you can see the call was reported by Chinese state media in a brief dispatch late Thursday. So this is, in China, they're a lot further ahead of us. So they say late Thursday did not immediately include any details. Mr. Trump and Mr. Xi were last known to have spoken to each other on January 17th. That was days before Trump was inaugurated. This is what Trump tweeted out on Wednesday, saying that Xi Jinping was very tough and extremely hard to make a deal with. The administration has accused Beijing of breaking the truce by restricting exports of critical rare earth minerals used by a range of American manufacturers, including car makers and semiconductor products. Shortage of the minerals, which are used to make powerful industrial magnets, could bring some American factories to a standstill. And that's really a thing that this is what we're discussing. China dominates the global market for the minerals and views it as a choke point over the United States. In response, the Trump administration has proposed a plan to revoke visas from some Chinese students and suspend sales to China, talking about the semiconductors. And another thing I wanted to mention that's in relation to this, Trump is set to waive some legal requirements to boost critical mineral. And so what we think this is what I would say, obviously China is using this in negotiations, kind of holding it in over the United States' head, saying that you need the refinement of these critical rare earth minerals. It's important that people understand it's not like, well, it's just China is extremely rich in these ultra rare earths. No. The United States has rare earths too. Now, sure, there's other places where we could extract more, like Greenland, like maybe Ukraine. We have the mineral deal with Ukraine. I'm not saying the United States has all the rare earths, but we have many rare earths. We just cannot refine them. That's the issue. It's not that, well, it's just China's luck. They got just they're resource rich like the Congo or something. That's not what this is. It's just the refinement of the rare earths is done in China, and so China is holding that over our heads, and it does seem like, I would guess, that this is coming up in the trade talks, and China is kind of using this as negotiating leverage, and so the administration is trying to adjust and do certain things like invoking some type of emergency powers here. As you can see, Trump is expected to use emergency powers and slash legal requirements, including some congressional funding approvals, relating to a law aimed at lifting U.S. production of critical minerals and weapons, according to a document. Trump's action would apply to the Defense Production Act, a U.S. law that grants the president broad emergency powers to control domestic industries and resources during national security emergencies. So they would deem what China is doing in restricting the rare earths a national security emergency. And, you know, if you're the president, you invoke these emergency powers, you got broad range of what you can do. The move would represent the latest attempt by the White House to reshape a critical mineral industry dominated by China, according to top United States experts. China is using its leverage, and so there it is. But I didn't read this, but China is using its leverage in response to Trump's trade war, recently halting critical mineral exports, rattling global supply chains. Documents are expected to be published on Wednesday, according to a government site. We want to boost domestic production of critical. Yeah, and so this was also in the big, beautiful bill. And nobody's talking about this because there's so many things in this bill. And, you know, people always talk about the deficit, and that's what Musk is really about. But, yeah, no, this is a big thing. It's about domestic refinement. You can talk about production, but, you know, it's more so about the refinement of them happening in the United States. And they say they're going to happen around military bases in the U.S. domestically. So you've got $50 million in projects that they're trying to get done here. The president can waive the requirement. So they're trying to loosen it up a little bit. They're trying to loosen it up. You can see at the bottom of this article, Trump has suggested on several occasions since returning to the White House that a call or a meeting with Mr. Xi was imminent. While Mr. Trump would rather speak directly with Xi Jinping, Chinese officials generally favored hammering out details in advance of any such call or meeting, and Beijing had been concerned about the possibility that Trump would embarrass Xi during talks. Oh man, and that would probably hurt the deal. But apparently they talked, so we'll see what happens, what comes out of this. And listen, it's gonna be a long, hard deal. There's no question about it. It's they're gonna have to hammer it out. But the point here with these trade deals is you want to get the other trade deals done. And there's been some reports with some of these countries, Brazil, possibly a trade deal happening. We've heard about India. We've heard about South Korea. You know, these other deals, they've got to come. And I did a video, was it yesterday or a few days ago, talking about the July 5th deadline. They're trying to really ramp up this process and say, all right, hit us with your best trade offer by June 5th, which is today. So we'll see if that happens. We'll see if that spurs any, and maybe there's some agreement. Maybe there's some of these deals that get worked out. But this becomes a thing to where, well, the deadline is like July 9th, July 10th. What do you do if you don't have many trade deals by that point? Does Trump really have much leverage? Do the tariffs go back on? I mean, technically there are tariffs on. I mean, this is what we've been saying. You know, there's 10% tariffs on, and we are generating around 22 or $23 billion. Now, it's not going to be a linear every single month. It's going to be 22, 23 billion, but it's a significant amount of money, even with just these 10% tariffs on globally. And then you have the auto tariffs, you have the steel and aluminum tariffs against Canada, and you have the, of course, 30% tariff still against China, which is a significant tariff. That's 30% just blanket tariff on the Chinese. Of course, compared to where we had it, which was 145%, it's gone down significantly. And when you talk about May, some of that earning was happening with the 145% tariff, which is going to earn you a lot more. It's since come down, so I don't think we're necessarily going to be making 22 or 23 billion per month, but we'll have to see how these trade deals get worked out in terms of the tariffs that Trump keeps on. He takes off. They did the deal with the UK. There were several tariffs that were around 10% in certain sectors that were kept on. So I would imagine you work out some of these trade deals. This isn't a free trade thing to where nobody gets tariffs. Everyone just, that's not what this is. And the thing is a lot of these countries are not operating on the same playing field as the United States. They don't even have tariffs. They have something very similar, like the VATs, the value added tax, to where they add a tax to imports coming from other countries that we don't have to pay. So if we import, we don't have to pay that tax. But the companies that are domestically within that country, they do. It makes our product less competitive on the foreign market, on the global market. So that's the big issue with that. And it's the same thing as a tariff. It's the same exact thing. So you're going to probably see a lot of VATs coming down in exchange for Trump removing some tariffs and things like that. It's basically a similar thing to reciprocal. Now, I understand that when Trump put those reciprocal tariffs on, they weren't necessarily reciprocal. They were based off of trade deficits. And you could, well, to be honest, with smaller countries, you can understand why we'd have a trade deficit with smaller countries, and just our consumer base is so rich. But some of the trade deficits are just out of control, and our consumer base is being taken advantage of by other countries, specifically China. That's why this has been a huge thing with China, because of the amount of trade that we do with them and a lot of stuff we buy from the Chinese. You also do have Elon Musk talking about the debt, saying he doesn't want to see America go bankrupt. So he's been really the whole thing with Musk has gotten weird because, this bill, this big beautiful bill, this has been a story for the past month or so. And it already made through like the House committee. Now it's in the Senate. The senators are making some changes. Then it's going to go back to the House. But it's like one day Musk just woke up and said, you know what? Now I hate it. I don't know if it's because he got out of the White House, out of his role within Doge, or what it is. But it's like he randomly wakes up one day and it's like 70 straight tweets. Oh, now it's all about the deficit. The debt is terrible. Listen, we've been trying, I made videos about the debt. I think it's terrible. Trump thinks it's terrible. Why do you think we're trying to raise money through the tariffs and do all of this stuff? There's so much working against Trump right now. And then it's like Musk is insinuating, well, because of the projections, they're saying we're going to add around $2.5 trillion in debt over 10 years, which, what is that, like 300? That's like, they always say these huge numbers. Just tell me what we're adding per year. And honestly, you can't even predict it because we don't know the amount of these tax cuts that are going to be made up in the form of just total economic output and tax revenue we make up from people buying things because they're going to have more money to spend. That's another thing with the CBO projection that people have been talking about, how they got it so wrong with Trump and also with Biden. When they give these projections, that's what all of this is based off of. They say, well, it's going to rise. The overall debt is going to rise because they're projecting a 1.6% growth rate, 1.8%. Well, no, Trump is saying it's going to be 3 or 4% based off of the largest tax cut in middle class history. And Trump was right back in 2017 when he did his huge tax cuts, and the projections were wrong. So we're basing it off of projections that have already been wrong when you're talking about this. But like what Musk is insinuating, if he's just basing it off of projections on what you think is going to happen with the economy, Trump has to give the tax cuts. I don't know, like the reason that we would supposedly be in more debt is because we lose revenue because there's not as many taxes. But Trump already promised the tax cuts. Now, the only thing you could say is, okay, things like the Golden Dome, things like an increase in the military budget by $150 billion. I thought that was bad. I said it. But I think the Golden Dome is good. It's only $25 billion upfront investment. Yes, there's going to be more that's going to have to be dumped into it. And there's a lot of people saying it's a waste of money, but it's like, you would think, and it's just logical, all anyone talks about the United States, it's the Atlantic Ocean, it's the Pacific Ocean. Who's going to invade us? There's nobody invading us. We're going to get hit with a nuke. That's what people are worried about. So shouldn't we have the most advanced technology to defend against that? But it's like, and then they say, well, I mean, are we in the business of spending that type of money right now with the amount? And then Musk says, well, it's a $2 trillion deficit. Well, it's really, when you look at from a you look at an administration level, it's a $1 trillion deficit is what we have. The other trillion is servicing debt. So you look at 2 trillion, you have to split it. It's 1 trillion is the deficit. And then the other trillion is servicing. So you put it together, yes, it's 2 trillion. But that's because of interest. The 1 trillion is because of interest that could go down if we get lower rates. Now, I'm not saying this is good. I want to eliminate it. It'd be great to eliminate it. The problem is if you bring it down, you're going to be dealing with a recession. Like if Musk is like, we're going to cut $1 trillion worth. Well, yeah, you're going to for sure have a recession, which, listen, maybe the United States needs it. When we're at $37 trillion in debt, I'd say, okay. But the problem is then it would be a negative reflection of the administration. Trump tries to do things like generate $700 billion in tariff money. Imagine that. I mean, because especially if you factor in where we're at right now, it's $1 billion. That's the total difference. The other billion is interest. So if you cut $700 billion into that and then you do some other savings, Musk said listen, if they really have saved $150 billion, that's no small feat. But I don't know, is it $150 billion per year? Or is it just $150 billion overall? That's the thing. If it's $150 billion per year, that's a lot of money they're saving, honestly, because that's about 15% right there. Now they say, no, it's 7%, but you're factoring in the interest. The interest can go down if we get lower rates. And the interest is like, what do you want us to do about that? This is you can say, well, Trump contributed to it. Yeah, but so a lot of presidents contribute to this. This is a big problem. It's a systematic thing. It's a systematic issue when it comes to U.S. debt. And what has to happen is the entitlements have to be rolled back. Social Security has to be redone. And there has to be a limiting of military spending. Those are the things you have to do, and then you'll be able to get it under control. All this other spending, it's all noise. And listen, I don't think it's good. I don't think USAID was doing anything special. It turned out they said it was a money laundering operation. But even if it was, I mean, the soft power was not being used properly. We know that now. So, look, with Musk, and then you've got this. I mean, Musk killed the bill. It's like, this is what he does. And so we're trying to work this out. But if Musk is basically insinuating, let me just say this, based off of these projections, the reason the projections show that Trump will add whatever it is, $2 billion to the debt over 10 years, give me a yearly number. I don't care about the big thing. It's irrelevant. We go a year by year. We want to know what is the amount that Trump is adding in terms of the deficit every single year. So what is it? 300 billion is what they're insinuating. They're basing it off of the fact that we're giving tax cuts, so we're going to generate less. So Musk didn't want the tax cuts. Trump has to do the tax cuts. And then they say, well, there's all this stuff in the way. Is this just tax cuts? That's what this bill is. And then they talk about AI and stuff. And I agree, states should have power. And you know, Trump. But I mean, when you talk about AI, that's a different animal in terms of regulation and things like that. So it's a little bit more complicated. But I know they have a problem with the AI, and Trump's trying to make it to where it's controlled at the federal level. But with Musk and this debt issue, it's like, we understand. I mean, do you think people just realize this yesterday? We've got a huge problem with debt. You think we don't know we have $1 trillion in interest payments? You think we don't know that we're spending more on interest than we are defense, although that can be changed. And that's what Musk said. He's like, oh, we're spending more on interest than we are the defense budget, because it's like $1 trillion versus $1 trillion now, because the defense budget's getting raised to $1 trillion. But imagine if we had 2% interest rates. I mean, we're going to get 2% interest rates, hopefully, within the next 9-10 months. Now, whether or not that's just me being bullish, I don't know. I can't predict it. But what I do know is, and this goes back to the whole trade deal and everything like that, the China deal is going to be very complicated. All right, it is what it is. I don't know what to tell people. But like, these other trade deals, they should be able to get ironed out. We should have at least 4 or 5 big countries that come to agreements on trade deals with the U.S. The problem is, it's not going to be this beautiful deal to where there's no tariffs on anyone, because that's apparently what people want. That's not what it's going to be. There's still going to be tariffs against these countries. Trump is trying to generate money. Listen, even with Trump's tariffs being neutered all the way down to where they are, towards a 10% global tariff, and it's 30% on China, you know, you're still looking at 300 billion per year possibly. That's the number I would put at in terms of tariff revenue. You could say maybe 250 when everything gets worked out, because there's going to be tariffs that are brought down, but 200 to 250 billion. I've said 200 to 300. So 200 to 300 in tariff revenue with very little change in terms of consumer. And this is another thing these people say. They've lost. They have lost. Liberals have lost. They said that it would be inflationary. Now it comes out Trump raised $23 billion. It's record tariff revenue. And then liberals tweet out these memes and say, who's paying for it? Do you want to know the number one metric that would show that consumers are paying for tariffs is an increase in inflation? Why is our core inflation at a 4-year low? You have zero proof. Energy is down. Food is down. The truflation is down. The core is down. It's all down. You have no proof. The U.S. consumers are paying $23 billion. Then how does Trump generate $23 billion with inflation at a 4-year low? You're going to tell me those are bad metrics? So they've lost, and they're lying. They're saying, well, we know the metric that would show that the U.S. consumers are paying. You said they were going to be inflationary. We've generated, then they say Trump taco, he chickens out. No, you're right. He chickens out. He only generated $23 billion. You're right. That's not much money. He's only going to generate $300 billion every year and cut 30% into this deficit. Why is Musk crying? Why doesn't he talk about the 30%? Because again, it's really $1 trillion. It's $1 trillion. And the other trillion is interest payments. It's servicing the debt. Why do you think Trump is forced to do all these radical moves? We have to refinance $9 trillion because of these these treasuries, these 5-year bonds that were taken out in 2021 in response to COVID, this is all real stuff. So Musk has to understand we are bringing the deficit down. You're basing it off of false data, faulty numbers from projections, and that were already wrong 2 times or like many times. And so this is the real stuff. So, but Musk, I don't know what Musk wants. If we don't give these tax cuts, this is what Trump promised. He said there's going to be tax cuts. Right now, maybe we can say on a bigger picture level, yes, giving tax cuts when we're paying $1 trillion per year in interest alone, it's probably not the smartest thing to do. But I mean, what do you want Trump to do? He won the election based off of this stuff. He had core promises. So it's like, and that's why the Democrats were kind of skittish, and they do the same thing to where, remember the Democrats are like, well, if you don't make over 400K, you're not going to be taxed more. But then they're like, no, now it's 100K. Well, if you make 100K, that's nothing now because of Biden and his inflation. So that's another thing we have to take into account. But either way, guys, well, I would say, I'm not going to say 100K is nothing, but depending on the city, it's not a lot of money. But the point here is with Musk, I mean, we'll see. Musk just does this to where he's bipolar. You know, he's got these things to where it's like, now he's this huge crusade against this bill. It's somebody needs to explain it to him. And then they're like, well, the Doge cuts. But I mean, it's like $9 billion in Doge cuts. Listen, I hope the Doge cuts happen. You know, that has to be a different bill. I hope the Doge cuts happen. But to me, I think Musk is more angry and about not being able to. I mean, Doge was neutered. They could not touch entitlements. They could not touch defense. So he's pissed off about it. And listen, it's unfortunate. And when you promise to, I mean, I don't know how you're going to slash $1 trillion in spending. That seems ridiculously crazy unless you're going to be able to, but even touching the entitlements, how do you slash $1 trillion in spending? I'm not sure about that. But guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you like the video down below. Also, follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.